They say it's not the mountains that make you stumble, it's the small stones you never notice. And that's the thing about the human mind. The real danger rarely announces itself. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It hides inside ordinary moments, a gentle tone, a calm smile, a well-timed silence. You don't feel attacked. You feel understood. That's how it begins. Carl Jung believed that what remains unconscious doesn't just stay hidden, it controls us. And that control often wears a kind face. In Jungian psychology, the shadow doesn't always look like darkness. Sometimes, it looks like peace. You might think you're surrounded by harmony, but beneath that surface, something quiet is shaping your reactions, your emotions, even your choices. The unconscious mind doesn't need permission to lead. It only needs you to stop paying attention. Look closer. That friend who always calms the room, but leaves you doubting yourself. The boss who never raises his voice, yet makes you feel small. The relationship where kindness becomes control and silence becomes obedience. These aren't random events. They are mirrors of the collective unconscious, patterns replaying themselves through generations. Jung saw it everywhere. The hidden choreography of power between archetypes. The way empathy can become a weapon when the repressed self goes unseen. This is not a story about villains. It's a story about awareness. About how calmness can hypnotize, how good intentions can disguise control, and how easily we mistake comfort for truth. In this journey, we'll walk through the quiet corridors of the psyche, the spaces between light and darkness, where kindness meets manipulation, and consciousness becomes the only defense. Because the danger you don't notice isn't out there. It's the one that gently takes your hand, smiles, and asks you to trust it. There's a strange paradox in human psychology. The most dangerous forms of manipulation don't come from shouting, but from silence. It's the calm tone that lowers defenses, the smile that hides intention, the warmth that feels safe, until it doesn't. In Jungian psychology, this is where the shadow often thrives, in the unconscious corners of our empathy. Carl Jung once said, "The brighter the light, the darker the shadow." Sometimes what feels peaceful is simply control wrapped in serenity. A person can sit across from you, voice soft as velvet, while quietly rewriting your perception of yourself. This is how the unconscious mind plays its clever games. The manipulator rarely sees themselves as one. They genuinely believe they are helping. In their story, they are the healer, not the controller, a classic case of the wounded healer archetype. They draw their power from emotional awareness, but instead of healing through awareness, they use it to shape others. It's shadow work gone wrong, inner alchemy reversed, where compassion turns into quiet control. You might recognize this in the coworker who suggests what's best for you, or the partner who always sounds reasonable while subtly making you doubt your judgment. And that's the terrifying beauty of calm manipulation. It doesn't demand compliance, it invites it. This is what Carl Jung described as projection and perception in motion. When someone knows how to read emotions but hasn't faced their own repressed self, their insight becomes a tool of influence. You might notice this pattern in everyday life. Someone giving advice that always leads back to their benefit, or creating an illusion of harmony while keeping the upper hand. The collective unconscious seems to whisper these patterns through countless stories, myths, and even modern relationships. To protect oneself from this unseen presence, one must practice self-awareness like a sacred ritual. Notice how your body reacts during conversations, tight chest, shallow breath, or the sudden need to explain yourself. These are not coincidences. They are the body's dream interpretation in real time, symbols of unease trying to speak. The meaning of life in such moments isn't grand. It's in reclaiming your voice. Read authors like Viktor Frankl or Marie-Louise von Franz. They teach how depth psychology transforms passive awareness into power. Consciousness is not passive. It's your shield. Yet the question lingers. What happens when kindness itself becomes the mask? When the persona, that social face we wear, turns into a subtle form of dominance. The line between empathy and control is thin, often invisible. As Jung and modern psychology remind us, what you resist persists. Maybe the next danger isn't out there, but within, the gentle shadow behind every kind word. There's a moment in every human connection when kindness stops being pure and starts turning into quiet control. Imagine this. Someone keeps asking, "Are you okay?" in that tone that sounds caring but carries a subtle demand for access. It's no longer about your well-being. It's about maintaining their emotional foothold. Carl Jung might say that this is the shadow slipping on the costume of light, the benevolent archetype of the caregiver twisting into the manipulator. The unconscious mind loves disguises, and the calm voice of help can hide the deepest hunger for validation. Think about your workplace. There's that colleague who just wants to help but somehow takes credit for every success that follows. Or that friend who constantly gives advice, but their help comes wrapped in invisible strings. Strings that pull tighter each time you make your own choice. These aren't villains. They are people acting from the repressed self, projecting their need for importance. In depth psychology, this is a classic case of the wounded healer trying to mend others so they don't have to confront their own wounds. The paradox? They truly believe they are doing good. Jungian psychology reminds us that even love can become a subtle form of dominance. A parent insists, "I only want what's best for you." Yet their child grows up afraid to make independent choices. A partner says, "I worry because I care," but uses that worry to control what you wear, who you see, or where you go. These are emotional mirrors reflecting the shadow in relationships, where projection and perception blur until affection becomes possession. To see this is to wake up, to recognize the unseen collective unconscious script playing behind ordinary gestures. Here's where real shadow work begins. In the ordinary. The next time someone offers help, notice the feeling it leaves behind. Do you feel freer or smaller? If you're the one offering help, ask, "Am I empowering or directing?" That small pause is inner alchemy in action. Write your answers. Journaling acts like dream interpretation for your waking life. Books like The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle or Man and His Symbols by Carl Jung can sharpen that awareness. They show how emotional alchemy turns manipulation into mindfulness. Because here's the twist. Control doesn't always arrive through words. Sometimes it enters through emotion, the silent exchange of energy that happens before a sentence is even spoken. You've felt it. One anxious person walks into a room, and suddenly everyone's heart beats faster. That invisible contagion, that unseen vibration, is where the next layer of manipulation hides. An understanding that hidden current is the key to freedom. Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt the mood, before anyone spoke? That quiet tension in the air, the weight behind someone's smile, the strange sense that something unseen has already entered your body. That's emotional contagion, the invisible transfer of energy that happens between souls. In Jungian psychology, it's the moment when the collective unconscious hums beneath the surface, connecting hearts before words. Carl Jung often said that what we fail to make conscious appears as fate. Sometimes fate is just emotion wearing perfume, passing from one person to another without asking permission. Picture a family dinner. One person arrives irritated from traffic. Within minutes, laughter fades, voices soften, and suddenly everyone's walking on eggshells. No one said anything wrong, but everyone feels wrong. That's the unconscious mind syncing frequencies. This isn't mysticism. It's biology meeting depth psychology. Our mirror neurons reflect not just gestures but emotions. We become living antennas of each other's inner weather. This is why a leader's calm can steady a team, or why a single anxious friend can drain an entire room. The power of the mind truly shapes reality's tone. In the language of shadow work, emotional contagion exposes what's repressed. When we unconsciously absorb someone's fear, it might be because that fear already lives within us, hidden in our repressed self. That's why certain people trigger us so deeply. They mirror the emotions we've locked away. The hero's journey of emotional awareness is learning to notice when the feelings you're carrying aren't even yours. Try this. When you feel overwhelmed after being with someone, pause and ask, is this mine, or did I absorb it? That question alone begins the inner transformation. Now, here's where awareness turns into practice. When you sense that tension in your chest, stop and breathe, slowly, deliberately. Inhale through the nose for 4 counts, hold for 2, and exhale gently through the mouth. Feel the air move through your body, washing away the borrowed emotions. Each breath reminds you, I am home in myself. This is how spiritual awakening starts, not in temples or retreats, but in moments of quiet reclamation. Breathing is your first act of inner alchemy, where chaos dissolves into calm. Then, visualize a golden light, soft, radiant, protective, entering your lungs as you inhale. See it spreading through your chest, your arms, your mind, until it fills every corner of your being. That light isn't imagination. It's the unconscious mind translating healing into image. In Jung's view, symbols are the language of the self, and gold, the symbol of transformation. Imagine this light expanding outward, creating a gentle field around you. That's your energetic boundary. That's your awareness, alive, luminous, and untouchable. Awareness isn't just thinking, it's seeing without blinking. Carl Jung used to say that we don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. What he meant was simple. Real safety doesn't come from avoiding darkness, but from turning on the light inside your own mind. In Jungian psychology, awareness is the sword that cuts through illusion. The unconscious mind is like a deep ocean. Most people live on the surface, carried by waves they don't even see. But the moment you dive beneath and open your eyes, the sea loses its power to scare you. Awareness, then, is learning to breathe underwater. You've probably felt it before, that uneasy chill when someone's words sound kind, but something in your body whispers, be careful. That whisper is not paranoia. It's your inner voice of the self trying to wake you up. Jung believed that consciousness begins in those small moments of discomfort, the times when your intuition argues with your logic. It's like your shadow tapping your shoulder, saying, look closer. When you notice that tension instead of ignoring it, you're doing shadow work without even realizing it. The first step isn't fighting manipulation. It's noticing the moment you start feeling it. Think of awareness as a mirror, not a weapon. When someone tries to project their emotions onto you, anger, guilt, fear, the mirror simply reflects it back without absorbing it. That's projection and perception in action. In everyday life, it looks like this. A coworker blames you for something you didn't do, hoping you'll carry their frustration. Instead of reacting, you breathe, remember who you are, and let their emotion fall flat. That stillness is not weakness, it's inner transformation. It's the alchemy of trauma, turning reaction into reflection. Every time you refuse to mirror someone's chaos, you strengthen your consciousness. Jung compared this process to the individuation journey, the lifelong task of becoming who you truly are, beyond masks and personas. Imagine a theater full of actors, each playing the role the world expects. Awareness is the moment one actor steps off stage, looks into the audience, and realizes it was all a play. He sees the persona, the mask he wore, and the shadow, the part he hid behind it. Once he sees both, he's free. That's what happens when you stop taking emotional manipulation personally. You stop acting in other people's stories and start writing your own. So when you feel drained, confused, or controlled, pause. Breathe deeply, in through your nose, out through your mouth. Imagine a golden light entering with each inhale, filling your chest with calm. See it traveling through your veins, clearing the fog. As you exhale, imagine that same light expanding around you, like a quiet shield. That's not fantasy. It's a symbolic ritual of spiritual awakening. Jung called symbols the language of the unconscious, and light is the oldest one of all. Each time you do this, you remind your psyche, I'm awake now. Because once you are aware, no one can control what you see. And yet, there's a deeper revelation waiting, that the same manipulative patterns we fear outside often exist inside. The real journey begins when you realize that awareness doesn't just protect you from others. It also invites you to meet the manipulator within, the one who hides behind good intentions, fear, or pride. What happens when the mirror turns toward that side of yourself? That's where the silence begins to speak. It's strange, but the most manipulative part of you probably believes it's protecting you. It doesn't wear a villain's mask. It wears your smile. It says, I'm just trying to help, when deep down it wants control. It says, I just want peace, when what it really fears is rejection. Carl Jung taught that every light casts a shadow, and within every act of kindness, there can be a quiet negotiation for safety. That's the paradox. Manipulation often comes from love that's never felt safe enough to be love. It hides in calmness, in generosity, in the tone we use to avoid conflict. The shadow is rarely cruel. It's scared. This realization can feel like betrayal, because it's easier to see manipulation in others than to recognize it in ourselves. But that's where the real inner transformation begins. The unconscious mind doesn't separate good from bad. It only shows what's hidden. It's like a loyal but misunderstood messenger, speaking through dreams, reactions, and slips of the tongue. When Jung explored dream interpretation, he noticed something fascinating. In every nightmare, there's a rescuer waiting to be found. The monster isn't the enemy. It's the part of us begging to be understood. Facing it doesn't destroy you. It dissolves the illusion that you were ever at war with yourself. Imagine a moment of conflict, maybe with someone you love. You feel tension rising, your body tightens, and a voice inside whispers, stay calm, don't lose control. That voice sounds wise, but it's often fear wearing wisdom's clothes. The persona, the social mask we show the world, wants to appear composed, reasonable, superior. But underneath, the repressed self trembles, desperate to be seen without disguise. When you silence your emotions in the name of peace, you're not resolving the conflict, you're burying dynamite. The shadow in relationships grows in those moments of false calm, feeding on everything left unsaid. The work of inner alchemy is to listen without judging, to sit in that discomfort and whisper, what are you trying to protect? Maybe your control hides loneliness. Maybe your silence hides shame. Maybe your generosity hides the fear of being unworthy. The point isn't to condemn, but to understand. Because in Jungian psychology, transformation doesn't happen by fighting the darkness. It happens when the darkness is brought into dialogue with the light. Every time you allow an uncomfortable truth to breathe, you perform a small act of emotional alchemy. Picture this. You're sitting alone after an argument, and everything inside you wants to justify, to explain, to win. Instead, you close your eyes and take a slow breath, in through your nose, out through your mouth. You imagine that familiar golden light from before, rising like sunrise inside your chest. With each inhale, it softens the tightness in your ribs. With each exhale, it fills the room with warmth. That light isn't fantasy. It's your consciousness taking shape, reminding you that awareness itself is healing. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of spiritual awakening, not escaping reality, but seeing it clearly enough to no longer need control. As the light expands, notice how the stories quiet down. The "I'm right and they are wrong" voices begin to fade, leaving only silence, not empty, but alive. In that silence, something ancient awakens: compassion. You start to see how every manipulator you've met was just trying to protect a wounded part of themselves, just like you. That's the collective unconscious revealing its universal truth, that all pain speaks the same language. What changes is how we listen. The more you hear your own shadow with empathy, the less power other people's shadows have over you. This silence becomes your mirror of truth. It doesn't flatter, it doesn't accuse, it reflects. It shows the games you play, the masks you wear, the love you withhold. And when you can look into that reflection without turning away, you've already begun to heal. Because silence, when filled with awareness, is not absence, it's presence purified. It's the moment when the wounded healer within you stops seeking patience and begins tending to itself. It's the hero's journey turned inward, slaying not dragons, but illusions. In that space, control loses meaning. You no longer need to manipulate outcomes, because you trust your alignment with life itself. You begin to sense a quiet intelligence guiding you, something deeper than logic, softer than reason. It's as if the unconscious mind and consciousness finally stop fighting and start listening to each other. The light doesn't destroy the dark, it holds it, like day holding the memory of night. You realize that peace isn't about purity, it's about wholeness. Every emotion you once resisted, anger, envy, fear, becomes a messenger instead of an enemy. And in that stillness, something miraculous happens. You start to feel at home in yourself. The manipulator within doesn't vanish, it transforms. It learns to speak gently, to serve instead of rule. What once tried to control becomes what now protects. Here we see another kind of alchemy, the alchemy of trauma, turning pain into wisdom, defense into awareness. You no longer live through resistance, but through understanding. And that's the quiet freedom the mirror was always trying to show you. Not perfection, but peace in knowing who you are beneath all masks. So sit in that silence again. Feel the golden light behind your ribs. It's not asking you to fix anything, only to witness. That's the final paradox of the psyche. Transformation doesn't happen through effort, but through surrender. When you stop running from yourself, the manipulator dissolves, and what remains is pure awareness, calm, clear, and quietly powerful. Because in the end, the mirror was never meant to accuse you. It was meant to introduce you to you. The truth is simple. Awareness changes everything. The moment you begin to see what once controlled you, the illusion breaks. Manipulation cannot survive where light is present. What was once invisible becomes clear, and what once held power begins to dissolve. Carl Jung believed that freedom starts the instant we face what we fear, not by fighting it, but by understanding it. You don't need to battle people. You need to notice patterns. The unconscious mind keeps repeating what you refuse to see until consciousness interrupts the loop. And when it does, everything quiets down. The shadow loses its disguise, and calmness becomes clarity instead of control. So take a moment tonight. Think about where peace feels heavy, where love feels conditional, where silence feels like pressure. Those are not coincidences. They are messages. The shadow speaks in whispers, not threats. Don't turn away from it this time. When you bring what's hidden into awareness, you reclaim the power that was quietly taken from you. Awareness doesn't make life perfect. It makes it real. And from that reality comes something deeper than comfort, peace rooted in truth. That's where freedom lives. Because in the end, it's never the mountains that make us fall. It's the small stones, the ones we overlook, the ones beneath our feet. But once you learn to see them, you stop stumbling. You walk differently. You live consciously. And that's when the path itself begins to rise to meet you. If this message spoke to you, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the next truth we uncover together may not just change how you see the world. It may change how you walk through it.